All right, let's get into this bad boy and let's have some fun with it. Kriega Bundle Up. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm coming to you from the library today because today we are doing a book review. Now, it's not Robert E. Howard specific, and I know some of you Robert E. Howard fans are going to be saying, Tennessee Facts, what the heck is going on here? You're just not talking enough Robert E. Howard. Well, listen, guys, listen. I'm literally down to 2 books. I got a shopping list now of only 2 books. 2 Conan stories left, and then we can get back into the actual battle royales. But in the meantime, we're walking through some of the other things that have come into the Casadel Fats here. I hinted to this one. I talked about we were going into this one. So today, you already saw the thumbnail. You know what we're getting into. Let me show you the book again. This is the Eternal Warrior Scorched Earth Graphic Novel. This is the first Valiant Kickstarter published book, which is kind of interesting. They put this one up on Kickstarter back in, I'm going to say November of 2021. And after 28 updates, it was finally delivered in December of 2023. Kind of an interesting one. And as you guys know, one of the things that I do actually like that's comic related and specifically comic related is I'm a sucker for Valiant books. I honestly am. We've done a couple of the Valiant Classic Omnibus review here. We're going to have another one of those coming shortly. But I really do connect with those characters. Mostly because, well, during those formative years of my life, when I was reading those comics that are coming out, those were the characters I was reading. I'm still a sucker for them today. I still go down and pull the books out of the actual boxes and read them regularly because, well, they're fun stories and really I identify with them. I identify with a lot of the characters in a lot of different ways. In fact, I think one of my favorite covers is actually Harbinger #1, where they're shooting at his Mustang, or the other one being that Solar Man of the Atom where his brains explode. Cool covers that came out back. All right, we're not going to go down the road of talking about old Valiant. I can go for hours on that stuff. Today what we're going to do is we're going to do the book review on this, okay? So we're going to do this one in chapters. For those of you who are Robert E. Howard fans who are only here for Robert E. Howard, well, you're going to want to skip this video and just hang out until we get those last 2 books so we can get back into the Battle Royales. Then we're going to do some other Robert E. Howard stuff. But again, I got to do these things in order. It's the way my brain works. So as I say, this one's chapterized. Number 1, we're going to talk about the book, what we physically see within it. What are some of the features within it? And I'm going to thumb through it. We're going to turn the camera around so we can see it. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to very briefly talk about the story. I don't want to throw any spoilers into this, okay? This is relatively new, and I don't want anybody out there saying, Tennessee Fats, you totally ruined that for me. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to wrap this bad boy up and we're going to say, well, should you buy this? Okay. Caveat that. As a Valiant fan, should you buy this? Maybe that's the question we'll ask then. Now, as you guys know, I always shoot that in one take at the end. I never know how that conversation is going to go, so, well, we'll see when we get there. For now, let's get into the book. All right, let's get into the book itself, shall we? As I told you guys, the first thing we're doing is we're going to walk through what this thing physically looks like, and there it is. Let's just start right here. What you're noticing here is as you look at this book, one of the things you'll see, are we looking very carefully here? Has anybody noticed something missing? Something missing from the book? What of all the books that we've reviewed lately that were omnibus or omnibuy or omniboo, or whatever you want to call them, what do you notice different about this? I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with bust backet. Dust jacket. There is no dust jacket on this book. Look at this, look at this, look at this. There's no dust jacket. It's just printed on the actual book itself. So look at this. I put it on the shelf without a dust jacket, and look what it says. Wow, Eternal Warriors. I will actually be able to know what this book is. And look at that fancy little Valiant label in it. Quite nice. I like the way they've done this. As you guys know, I can't, it's a me thing. I can't stand dust jackets. They just drive me batty. It's not drive, it's a short putt, by the way. But I just don't like them. Beautifully done, though. Let's just take a look at the book itself. This is a nice matte finish. You hear that sound? That's a matte finish. That's really nice. And it makes it soft, makes it tactile, makes the book feel more, what is the word I'm going to look for here? Organic. None of that high gloss tackiness that you get. Nice art on the front. There's the Eternal Warrior. There's a Geomancer. Not talking about him. And let's go to the back, shall we? A beautiful little wrap-up saying what it is. Here's all the stuff you need to know about the story. Brief story here, brief dialogue about what's going to happen. And this does actually give you a sample of what the internal art is going to look like. Really neat. I like the way they did this. It's a beautifully made book. If you look at it, perfectly square. No complaints there whatsoever. Wonderful looking bindings. It just really did work well. Let's take a look inside the book now, shall we? Inside, oh, there's my Eternal Warrior. This is my bookmark that came with it. That's part of the Kickstarter. And you got an internal little page there, and then you get the actual story itself. Now, this stuff in here you're not going to notice too much different than a conventional Valiant story, at least a modern conventional Valiant story. This right here, very close to the overall, actually directly in line with the overall thematic way they're putting the books together right now. Nicely done. The story and the art, as you can see right here, this is a great example of it. This is what it continues on. Now this is interesting actually, because if you look, and I'm going to point to this page in particular, one of the things they included in this right in the back is they wanted to show you the art going from the point in time of conception to actual completion. So they go pencil, ink, and then what have you. And look at this. Here's that very same page going from rough to pencils to ink as you go across the page. That's pretty darn cool. And you can see it right here. There's the page. And there's how it started, middle, and end before the actual color was put in. Very nicely done. This was a nice throw in they threw into the back of the book because the rest of the story literally is that. It is the story. And again, I'm not going to go into the story. We're going spoiler free on this one, but it was really well put together. The paper quality is nice and thick. Some of you might have just watched the last review that I did of an omnibus, and that was for the Invaders. And one of the comments, one of the critiques I made was that the paper actually seemed rather thin. In that case, you had to use a thin paper because you literally had 1,100 pages of material to stick in a book. In this one, you don't have 1,100 pages, so you can actually put the extra cost into the paper, and they clearly did it here. Beautiful matte finish on the pages on the inside. This overall is just wonderfully themed. The overall book starts off without a dust jacket. It gives you that soft tactile sense. Then you get to the inside and you find the whole thing carries all the way through. Oh, by the way, that's one of the characters that actually appears in this one, but we won't talk about that right now. Very cool and very well done. I liked the actual physical aspects of this one. Let's get into the story now. All right, let's get into this bad boy and let's talk about the story. Now, I tell you, I'm going to keep this one really, really short and really, really brief as far as story goes because this is a relatively new book. Now, granted, for those of you who are part of the Kickstarter campaign, we all got a sense of what the story was going to be about when we first chose to pledge on this one. The pledge on this thing was way back in November of 2021, and this thing was finally delivered all the way down to December of 2023. So you're talking about a year plus in production there for the time that this actually go from pledge to book in hand. But the story was discussed throughout that time. If you were really somebody who was just sitting there on the Kickstarter and rereading that same page again and again, you could kind of infer what was going to happen in this one. Effectively, this is really what I would call a stereotypical, and I don't mean that in a negative way, a stereotypical Eternal Warrior story. It had everything that would be required conventionally to be within an Eternal Warrior story, and as such, it's not just stereotypical, it's prototypical. So you end up with this story wherein you have everything that you would typically see in a really good Eternal Warrior arc. Eternal Warrior, for those of you who don't know, is a character that lives, well, almost forever. Not quite forever. For those of you who really know, you know when he started, and that's not really a forever point, but we'll just call it as it is, okay? He's a guy that's been around for a long time. He fights on behalf of the Earth, he listens to the Geomancers, who are the voice box for the Earth, and at the end of the day, it's his job to protect these Geomancers and make sure that the Earth's will is being done. One of the things that Valiant's done lately, and I honestly give them a lot of credit for this, was they started to actually ask the question of why. And this book does a wonderful job of doing that. The Eternal Warrior story is right at the beginning where really just him following the formulaic arc of this is what I do. I start here, I fight this, I kill this, I end here, without the end because he doesn't end. So you end up with this overarching story that goes from really, I mechanically complete my work to the point where I finish my work. When Valiant relaunched in 2012, and I'm going to call that the relaunch for a variety of reasons, and if you're a Valiant fan, you know why I'm saying that. They really started to ask some critical questions. Why? Anyways, the guy, the Eternal Warrior, stepped back, started to ask himself why. He started to have a real crisis of faith. And it was interesting because what Valiant's done since then is they've really turned him into this almost internal combative character. He's constantly fighting on the inside to find out why, to really justify why. And he's spending more and more time feeling guilt for his past actions. And you see this as a recurring theme in a lot of the relaunched Eternal Warrior material. Now, I haven't read all of it. It'd be impossible for me to claim that because I've been too busy reading all the rest of my Conan stuff. But there's a lot of that in there from what I have seen. And this story really builds on that more. It's really him confronting what he deemed to be a major, what he's going to call success, but also a failure. At the point in time where he decided not quite to listen to the Earth. He decided to do something a little different. And as a result of that, let's just call it, everything's come home to roost. So he's now got to deal with the ramifications of that. And it's a question of, well, actually, is that the ramifications of that? But again, I don't want to spoil the story for you. What I am going to tell you is something timeless, or seemingly timeless, has come back. Gilad is not going to have a good time with this. And at the same time, we have some supporting characters who come into this one to make major appearances. For example, there's a Geomancer in this, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying that, because whenever there's an Eternal Warrior, there's a Geomancer story. And I did point out the Geomancer on the cover when we looked at this thing physically, so you know that's there. You also have the supporting character of his brother appearing at one point in time. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on that one, but I got to tell you, honestly, my favorite Valiant character of all times is his brother. Well, one of his brothers. I'm not going to talk about the other one here. Anyways, that's really what happens in the story, in that he has this basic problem come back to become a modern problem, and he has to deal with it. The Earth has to deal with ramifications of that. And during this, he, the Geomancer, and even his brother to a lesser extent, grow as characters. And they become a little bit more complex. Another layer of complexity comes within them. Quite an interesting story. Is it something that gives you a final answer where you go at the end of the day, great, I now have that final chapter in Final Crisis or whatever it was that makes me finally understand what happened here? No, it doesn't give you that. It just gives you another chapter in the Eternal Warrior mythos that I think is actually pretty critical. I enjoy this one for that very reason, because it does force you to think, who is this guy? Why is he doing it? And what does he think about it? But at the same time, he ends up still coming out as the same character again, just with that extra layer of complexity. Quite an interesting story. I actually give this one a thumbs up. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up and let's really get a sense of whether this is something you should buy or not. Okay, let's start with that $1 million question. Tennessee Fats, should I buy this book? Well, I've gone through the two different aspects of this book, but one of them I did in a very cursory manner. I didn't want to give you guys any spoilers. I didn't want to tell you what happened in this, because this is a relatively new story. Many of you wouldn't have read it, or you wouldn't know what the actual story is within it. There were snippets that were within the original Kickstarter notifications to tell you what the overall arc was going to be, but I don't want to ruin that. Physically, this is a really cool book. There are a lot of aspects that I really liked about this, but the most important one for me is there's no bloody dust jacket. I hate dust jackets. So really just printing this directly on the book with that nice matte finish, that was bang on. I like that. Story-wise, quite good. It's a great Eternal Warrior story. It gives you a little bit of character development in him, gives you a little bit of character in the people around him, some of them. And at the end of the day, there's a conclusion. And everybody just moves on. It's not one of those things where, oh, it's a panacea, happy Disney ending. It's not one of those. No, definitely not. Definitely not. It is a very good, complex, but good conclusion. So 2 points on that. Should you buy it? Well, that's a tough one. If you really like the Eternal Warrior, honestly, I think you should buy this. If you don't know enough about the Eternal Warrior, again, I'm going to say you should buy this. This is a great intro book that'll walk you into the character. If you're really tired of Eternal Warrior stories, you've read too many of them, well, then you shouldn't even be watching this video. You should just be moving on and elsewhere. But if you are somebody that was willing to be open-minded about this one, and you were willing to actually give the character a chance, this could be one that if, honestly, you weren't a Valiant fan up until now, it might convince you otherwise. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up. I gotta tell you, everybody, this was a fun one for me. I don't get to read enough new Valiant material, and I think that's a general statement, because I don't think any of us that are Valiant fans get to read enough new Valiant material. This was a fun one. A little disappointed with the whole time on and how long it took to get out to me, but again, it's a Kickstarter. What do you think is going to happen? Nothing works smoothly in these things. So the fact that it got to me just makes me happy. And honestly, it was a good story. Well worth the wait. Definitely made me happy. We're going to be doing another Valiant Omnibus review on the channel a little bit later. It's actually right over there. I'm not going to talk about which one it is, but it is actually related to this topic. Interesting. Anyways, everybody, that's our video this time. As I say, we are missing two more, but only two more to actually finish the Conan Battle Royales for Robert E. Howard. Really, really hoping here, fingers crossed, that when we get into the Toronto Comic Con, we're going to be able to find those last two books and be able to finish that one off, because there's 2 videos left that have to go in that series and then the grand wrap up. But we will get there eventually, because even if I don't get them at the Toronto Comic Con, I know one shop that I really don't want to buy from does have them. I'm just going to be paying through the nose in every possible way to get them. So we will get there, one way or another, by hook or by crook. We will get there. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you in the next video.